Next one is titled as Leadership for New Economic Realities. There's a lot of adjustment happening. Of course, we've spoken about the patterns and the trends in terms of the ecosystem, the technology, and the new ideas which are coming. The driving force, of course, is the idea and the vision of financial inclusion of all sectors of the society and all sectors of economy. But I could not help but notice, as Saqib and Aurangzeb Saab were talking about it, what is the role of the leadership? How do you provide and design that enabling environment is something that comes to our mind. You can't be very tight-lipped, you can't be squeezing them, because otherwise it opens up another set of challenges. But can you really afford to be as liberal? I was recently at a conversation which was about the Roshan digital account, just mentioned in the opening ceremony. And I remember one of the embassies of Pakistan mentioning if we can forego the requirement that anybody who's an overseas Pakistani is going to open an RDA account, if the source of income, that declaration could be done away with. I mean, these are all choices and aspirations that we all have, but just to tell you that these are the ground realities, and of course there's a business advantage to it, but as signatories, as designing a responsible, transparent lifestyle product, that was a big question mark to all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, how will the leadership be adjusting? This one will have some of the biggest names of the Pakistan financial sector and industry present here. Together, they will share and allude upon the various realities and how they're all coming together to formulate the bigger picture. Is there more opportunity or are there more challenges? And what is the motivation and how and where are we driving that motivation to sort of continually meet these challenges and carve out the opportunities from them? First and foremost, I would like to invite our moderator for this panel discussion. Please put your hands together and welcome the founder and CEO of Planetive, Ms. Ayla Majid. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the President and the CEO of Faysal Bank Limited, Mr. Yousaf Hussain. Please also join me in welcoming the President and the CEO of Habib Metropolitan Bank, Mr. Mohsin Nathani. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, the President and the CEO of JS Bank, Mr. Basir Shamsie. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mohammad Shoaib, CFA, CEO of Meezan Investment Management Limited. We have a message from our other two members. Unfortunately, Mr. Shahzad Dada could not join us in the panel, and we are expecting we might be joined by Mr. Atif Bajwa, who's the President and CEO of Bank Al Falah. Ayla, over to you, and the timer will be marking the last 5 minutes of the panel discussion for your perusal. Thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Sidra, and a pleasure to be moderating this wonderful session with these amazing panelists. Like Sidra mentioned, Shahzad Dada, UBL president, unfortunately could not join us. He's recovering from COVID, but he sends his best wishes. He really wanted to be here. So the discussions that we've been listening to since this morning, they have set the stage very aptly in terms of what are the challenges that are there going forward in the future. Entering 2022, we see lots of challenges. Of course, the last 2 years have had a lot of impact on the same, but I think going forward, what we see is that we have sheer resilience. It'll be important to sort of note that what are some of the challenges going forward. So if I talk about the global scenario, the challenge of the global leadership, both in terms of politics as well as technology, climate change, and glad to hear a lot of good conversation since the morning here as well. It is for real, and of course, greenwashing is not going to work. Sustainability is the main driver for organization strategy going forward. The reality of work from home has changed the dynamics so much in terms of how organizations have adapted themselves, and would like to, of course, hear how the banking sector is doing that. There's also, of course, a challenge that a lot of people are really, not everyone is very ready to come back to work. As per an Economist survey, 85% of the women still feel that they are pretty comfortable working from home, and the number for men as well is not that less, it's around 75%. For the employees, it's sort of like a 50-50 ratio, but for the employers, 75% of the employers, of course, want their workforces to be back, so there is a lot of readjustment that needs to be made. Of course, there's like all these global trends, people now going to space. There's a space fanatic billionaires race, but I think one important area which we should start thinking about is the metaverse. How is that going to shape the future and going forward? And I would like to sort of start the conversation with our amazing panelists. Since financial institutions sit on the largest pool of capital, how do they see these trends? Mohsin, I would like to ask you first. What are your thoughts on the going forward trends given these challenges?
Thank you very much, Ayla, and thank you very much, Natshil, for inviting us here for this panel. And as you said in your introductory comments, that our previous speakers have touched upon the leadership aspect and what's happening around the world. I think it's, and I remember Subha jab shuru hua tha session, to Air Marshal Saab ne, when he talked about leadership, he talked about innovation, passion, empowerment, and then subsequent speakers also talked about it. So what I would like to start off by saying is that there has been a lot of talk about leadership, a lot of research about leadership globally over the last several decades. In the last decade or so, we've been hearing that leadership is not only about having technical knowledge. In fact, it has moved a lot away from technical to more leaders who have a high EQ in ability to work with people, etc., etc. So we've been seeing that transition and change. But if you look at the last couple of years, what that pandemic has done is it has really accelerated the whole change. How leaders have to think. It goes beyond not only the technical aspects, goes way beyond how they would look at their own businesses. We heard Governor Raza Sahab say this morning about exogenous factors, which has become so true, कि आज आपके ऊपर जो आपके काम पे impact आ रहा है is more so because of external factors than your internal factors. So the reason I'm sharing this with you is with the audience is that the whole leadership game has been changing and now has become even more critical to understand what is required, what it entails, and our way forward. Everybody has talked about digital, so I won't go too much into digital apart from saying that yes, we use the term as disruptive, evolving, change, etc. All of these terms are absolutely correct. But bottom line of digital ki ye ho gayi, and in the context of leadership is that the organizations have to be focused on the change this is bringing about. The whole buying behavior, the whole consumer behavior. आप retail outlets को देखें जो पहले retail outlets पे sale पर depend करती थी, in 2 years time 50% of the sales are online. You look at the whole travel industry. 5 साल पहले हम hotels ढूंढते थे, fax करते थे. आज आप website पे जाएं, you're able to choose whatever you want. So the whole buying behavior is changing. So the relevance of this is that the right leadership who's going to be focused on the digital evolution actually will be able to determine the future of their own organization. The organizations will either go forward who have an open mind, and God forbid if they are not adapting accordingly, piche ho jayega. So this is one thing that I wanted to mention in the leadership aspect. A couple of other points I would also want to make is the whole the development aspect of leadership and the talent jo humne grow karna hai. Now this is an area where I don't think इतना अभी भी focus across the board है जितना होना चाहिए. The success again of the organizations will depend on the leader that they have or the leadership team that they have, which in turn is developing the next line, third line of talent. This includes gender diversity, this includes people with disabilities, this includes a mix of the younger generation versus the more experienced generation. So I think all of these things will have to be brought about in the planning, and I would actually go to the extent of saying that in today's world, a success largely will depend on the leadership if they're able to develop the next second or third line. ये कोविड ने बहुत सारी चीज़ें एक्सेलरेट कर दी हैं. अभी जो गवर्नर सिंध कह के गए या जो स्टेट बैंक गवर्नर कह के गए हैं, they are perfect examples. What did the state bank do during the crisis? Governor said March से लेके जुलाई में they came up with schemes which had never been thought about before. And coming up with schemes means a lot of work. They have stakeholders involved, थे, banks थे, regulators थे, etc. etc. उन सब के साथ आपने एग्री किया, लॉन्च किया, एग्जीक्यूट कर दिया. इसी तरह से NCOC की बात हुई जो गवर्नर इस्माइल साहब कह रहे थे. A lot of tough decisions were made. So what is the relevance of the leadership over here to be able to think outside the box what the new world requires. In today's world, businesses को आप देखें, supply disruption हुई हुई है, logistics disruption हुई हुई है. Yet businesses, many businesses in Pakistan are doing exceptionally well. So I would just sort of conclude by saying that to deal with the new world, I would ascribe that the leadership requirement, the leadership challenges, and the leadership development are really, really paramount.
Mohsin, thank you so much. Really good points. And I think in particular, I would like to highlight one again, diversity and inclusion. And I think now with the use of technology and even work from home actually provides opportunity to employers. And of course, Aurangzeb, the president of HPL, also mentioned that digital is a means, and of course, going towards increasing financial inclusion. Yousaf, I'll come to you, and I would ask your thoughts on what are the important challenges and things to do in terms of and also from the perspective of Islamic banking while using these tools and to enhance financial inclusion.
I think पहले तो मोहसिन ने बड़ी अच्छी बातें की. I think एक point जो मैं उसमें ऐड करना चाहता हूँ वो है empathy का. You know, you have to realize that what does your customer want and what does your sort of workforce want in terms of an enabling environment. So ये जो है ये actually realize करना पड़ेगा और कर भी रहे हैं लोग कि दुनिया कैसे चेंज हो रही है और इसमें रिक्वायरमेंट कैसे चेंज हो रही है. तो इट्स द स्पीड ऑफ द चेंज. एंड आई थिंक अनदर इम्पॉर्टेंट पार्ट इज़ के जो डिपेंडेंसीज अपॉन एक्सटर्नल पार्टनर्स हैं. सो नॉट एवरी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन इज़ केपेबल ऑफ हैंडलिंग दैट चेंज. और इंटरनल डेवलपमेंट्स के ऊपर जब ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस जाती हैं तो वहाँ पर फिर प्रॉब्लम होती है, टाइम लगता है. सो इट्स आई थिंक इट्स वेरी इम्पॉर्टेंट कि जो एक्सटर्नल हमारे पास चैनल्स अवेलेबल हैं, एक्सटर्नल पार्टनरशिप्स हैं, उनको बैंक्स के अंदर या इन जनरल भी हम उसको टैप करें सो दैट वी कैन मैच द स्पीड ऑफ द चेंज. और आई थिंक इट इज़ वेरी वेरी इम्पॉर्टेंट कि जो empathy along with speed of the change and the external partnership. So these three things I would like to add what Mohsin said. अच्छा, अब इस्लामिक बैंकिंग के बारे में अगर बात करें तो it is absolutely an important element in terms of the financial inclusion. जो स्टेट बैंक के सर्वेज़ हैं और इन जनरल हमारी जिस तरह की मार्केट है वो ये clearly indicate करती है that a large proportion of our potential customers do not have a banking relationship because they feel that they need to have the Sharia compliant solutions available, and interest perspective say they're not that comfortable in terms of conventional banking. And that's why if you see that Islamic banking growth as compared to the conventional banking growth is almost 50% more. So there is a general liking in terms of Islamic banking. There's a very strong preference. So Faysal Bank, we are going through this journey of converting from a conventional bank to an Islamic bank. It's probably one of the largest conversions in the world that a running bank is going through. So हमने जो customer behavior वहाँ पर देखा है, वहाँ पर ना सिर्फ जो है वो आपको growth मिलती है in terms of the new customers, बल्कि existing customers भी जो है वो they have a preference that if all things are the same in terms of the product availability, in terms of the channels that are available, then there is a strong inkling towards Islamic banking. So we have seen that, and it is clearly a preference. इस चैनल को जो है इस्तेमाल हम भी कर रहे हैं और आई थिंक तमाम बैंक्स इसको यूज़ कर रहे हैं ऑब्वियसली ऑन फॉर कमर्शियल पर्पसेस तो अपनी जगह पे है कि आपको एक मार्केट मिल रही है नई और उसके अंदर ग्रोथ है बट आई थिंक फ्रॉम अ फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन परस्पेक्टिव एज वेल सो देयर इज़ अ लॉट ऑफ मार्केट there are a lot of people who actually have a preference for Islamic banking. I think the important part is कि इसके लिए channels available किए जाएं इसके लिए education in terms of understanding what Islamic banking is, that is a clear gap. So hopefully जैसे जैसे banks इसके ऊपर focus कर रहे हैं और इसकी understanding बढ़ती जा रही है और इसके number of branches जो हैं access to the banks बढ़ता जा रहा है so I would think that it should act as a major sort of booster in terms of the financial inclusion.
Thank you, Yousaf. Indeed, financial inclusion, enhancing this is so important for our overall economic growth and economic drive. And of course, bringing in now the digital channels hopefully will also sort of help scale this. Basir, I would turn to you and ask you that in the going forward and in the era of new economic realities, how has JS Bank taken on some of the challenges and turned them into opportunities?
Thank you, Ayla. So, and I'm going to talk about, of course, you've spoken about the pandemic, and I come from a treasury background. So for me, the pandemic meant there was extreme volatility. And with this kind of volatility, it is very difficult to predict what will happen. But what you do need is you need to react very, very quickly. Because you are not quite sure what the right decision is, but you react quickly. And almost many of the people here are my age, and they would remember a quote from Tom Cruise in the movie Top Gun, there's a need for speed. So as a leader, what do we really do? As a leader, one of the main things we have to build in our organizations is culture, right? And as you've always heard, culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? So we have to build culture. Luckily at JS Bank about 3 years ago, we started building a culture of, everybody's heard the term, building an agile organization. We started this 3 years ago. But frankly, of course, some trainings, and it's a buzzword, and we was going through it. But adaptability was, I must admit, slow. And then came the pandemic. And frankly, it was a kick in our backside, like you could not imagine. And it really pushed our agile organization agenda forward. Now, lots of people are here, and we've heard agile, and it means different things to different people. Within our own bank, it means different things to different people, depending on what you do in the bank. So for a technologist, agile would mean simple project delivery in agile versus waterfall. For our HR head, it would mean a flat organization with enabled teams. For our product head who's here, it would mean cross-functional teams and fall fast approach to life, right? But yes, all of that is agile and all of that is true. But to me, agile is all of this and a lot more. It is innovation in a nutshell. It is a whole culture in an organization that we can move faster, we can make some mistakes, and we can get up and we can start running again. We have, even with the help of the pandemic, I'm saying, it pushed us in that direction. I think we are still only a third of the way there, even after these 3 years. Yes, some of the squads are there now. Some of our technology is developed in an agile way. We've had transformation. We've had maybe 8 direct reports as opposed to 4 direct reports. We have a flatter organization. But we are only a third of the way there. But what I want to say to you guys, with this very limited success as a leader of getting an organization only a third of the way there, what we've really been able to achieve, and I have to look at our relative speed 3 years ago and today. What we've been able to achieve is time to market speed, which is probably 3 times faster than it was 3 years ago. And that's the crux of it. When the pandemic hit, Dr. Azhar Saab were talking about those schemes, someone had to execute them. right? Those are a lot of schemes. If you saw that graph, there was a new scheme coming out literally from the State Bank every 3 weeks, right? It was turf, but it was reorganization, the debt restructurings, there was payroll finance. It was a number of those things. We were able to take a lead in it despite our size, I think because we had that mindset. Two, we actually reduced the number of branches during COVID, and we were able to bring all of our technology platforms in-house because we realized there was a need for speed, and having our main customer-focused applications led through vendors was like saying we've outsourced our main branch to someone else. So in those 2 years, we brought all of our technology platforms that are customer-facing in-house. As a bank, to build tech is not that easy because you're not used to it, right? So we were able to do that. Then we started coming out of COVID. And then there was a need now to start pushing the economy, to start looking beyond COVID. So there were all these schemes, again, from the central bank, some from Islamabad, like Kamyab Jawan. We were able to lead in Kamyab Jawan, in SME finance, and mortgage. And now, of course, there's digital onboarding, which is now live. There's Rast, which is a huge priority. So all of these things we were able to do because we had a mindset to have an agile organization. And I think as leaders, we are still very far from where we need to be. Today, our customer is moving way faster than we are. And today, we are very thankful that our regulators are also moving faster than we are. Remember, the customer wants instant gratification. They're using Netflix. They're using Spotify. They don't want to wait for anything to open in 4 hours or 24 hours. And they need it error-free. So guys, I suggest giddy up. It's time to move really fast. And building, as a leader, if you can build an agile organization, it's going to help you get there. So that's from my side.
Thank you, Basir. And I think being like almost everyone is a bank customer here of one of the banks, I think the customer expectation, of course, is like a seamless experience. And obviously, everybody wants agility. And I like the fact that the banks, as well as the regulator, is now so focused on that customer experience and sort of making changes as per the dynamics that really acquire, and of course with the right kind of speed. Shoaib, I would turn to you and ask you, obviously in the same realm with regards to the technology, how AI and data analytics, of course, you are from the asset management side. Would like to hear your thoughts, how that industry perhaps has reshaped, and also would like to get your thoughts on that going forward. I'm actually quite intrigued that we should start thinking about metaverse, augmented reality, virtual reality. Is that going to impact your industry? Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for having me here. As you rightly mentioned, compared to the other esteemed guests on this panel, I'm probably odd man out, not belonging to a bank. So I would try to relate to my area. And as you rightly said, in the last decade or so, we have been hearing a lot about the artificial intelligence, machine learning, robo-analytics, robo-advisors. But what has actually happened in the last 20 months, or 22 months, I would say, is this element of change has really compounded. And that has really impacted different businesses. And then I will try to relate to my business. So one thing that I would like to highlight is that when this change is happening, now the change which is happening today is not only amplified, as Aurangzeb mentioned earlier, but there are 3 dimensions of this change. And these 3 dimensions are, number one, the change is perpetual. So it used to happen that change ho rahi hai, phir thoda stability aa gayi. Now it is perpetual, it's occurring all the time in all the dimensions. The other is it's pervasive. It's unfolding in multiple areas and in each and every aspect of life. And the third is exponential. So change is accelerating at an accelerating pace. So from the perspective of a true leader in this new environment, I think one has to handle these elements of change in a very positive manner. And since I have some academic background as well, being a professional, but I've always been associated with academics. That's why I was involved with CFA Society for the last 20 years. And recently I had an opportunity to go to Harvard Business School in October last year. And in one of the sessions, we were talking about a study done by Stanford, actually, on this concept of sapient leadership. What is the leadership that is needed for tomorrow? And then I related to it, and that is something we are trying to implement in our organization and in our culture as well. So there are basically 3 or 4 very important elements which I would like to highlight here, and then I will tell you that how we have worked on that side. So the first and the very important element of a new leader is that traditionally the concept of leadership was that the approach was to show up as a leader, I know it all approach. Now that approach has to change. The pace of change is so much and it's so dynamic that you have to take your team together. You have to have empathy. We talked about it in some of the earlier sessions as well. You have to engage with your team. You have to develop cross-functional teams. You have to make everyone fully participate in that change. The other important point that I would like to talk about is the second point is continuous learning. And that is the spirit which has to be followed. And in that context, I would say that I think one thing very important is that technology is very, very important. But as a leadership for change, what it requires is that not only you spend and invest in technology, but you also invest in your people to make the right use of that technology. If you have a very innovative products and the solutions, but your team is not well equipped, then certainly you will not be able to make the most of it. And if you have a very good human talent, but if it is not connected with the right technology, it is doomed for failure. So these are a couple of the thoughts that I wanted to share. And as far as Meezan's experience is concerned, I will relate it to what has happened, that we were already on a digital transformation journey when this pandemic attacked us in February 2020. But alhamdulillah, we were among the very first organizations actually to go 100% on work from home model. We invested very heavily in our digital assets. We equipped our sales team with a very new sales app so that they can connect digitally with their customers. We completely changed our processes, and it took us like about 2 months actually to make a fast leap on that side. And the end result is very, very pleasant, very, very surprising. So in that year of pandemic, Meezan investment grew by 66% in terms of assets under management, which was a record in the last 20 years. The other thing that I would like to share is, and obviously that journey, we have not stopped that journey is continuing. So another very important thing that I would like to report is that in terms of our volume of transactions, and probably this could be an inspiration for some of the big guys sitting here, 88% of our transactions are paperless. So when a customer does 100 transactions, 88% of the transactions have no paper involvement. It's all done digitally. The other important thing is we refined our back office processes as well. So in terms of paper consumption, we have cut down our internal paper consumption by 50%. And last thing that I would like to share is Governor Sahab was here, and RDA, there's been a lot of discussion how it is contributing to the economic welfare of the country, how it is helping the expatriates. So alhamdulillah, वो जो कहते हैं ना कि वो हज़रत इब्राहिम अलैहिस्सलाम को जब वो आग में फेंका गया, तो वो एक चिड़िया थी, वो एक पानी का कतरा लेके जा रही थी. तो किसी ने से पूछा तुम्हारा क्या रोल है, तुम क्या कर लोगे, एक पानी के कतरे से क्या होगा? तो उसने कहा कि देखें मैं अल्लाह ताला के पास जाके बताऊंगी कि मैंने भी इसमें हिस्सा डाला था. So although our share is very limited in RDA mutual fund accounts, but because of all this transformation that we have gone through, 88% of the mutual fund accounts opened through RDA have been opened by Meezan Investments. So I think we have a long way to go, and this is a continuous change. We have to get ourselves equipped, we have to be ready, and that is my message to everybody here. Thank you.
Thank you, Shoaib. So this is a demonstration of that leadership is very outward-looking and and with an approach that all stakeholders' interest really needs to be looked after. And I would sort of turn towards a slightly sort of different dimension that planet and the environment is such a big stakeholder. And climate change is actually a systemic risk for the financial institutions as well. It impacts the overall global economy, impacts each one of us. Now, sitting on the largest capital pool, I'll reiterate, what is that the banks are doing? And I would like to sort of ask your thoughts on outside the traditional sort of things that are already being done. Also, the State Bank, of course, has a very good scheme for implementation of renewable energy, but would like to sort of know as to what additional interventions are there, and how can banks and financial institutions demonstrate their leadership in reduction of emissions. So, Yousaf, I would like to start with you, and the same question to everyone. Thank you.
I think unfortunately इसमें बहुत ज़्यादा काम जो है वो नहीं हुआ, ठीक है, but you know it's the other way around. Actually the banks are learning from their customers. So a lot of exporters actually, because there is a global requirement in terms of meeting the environmental standards, so a lot of customers are actually doing it, and the banks are actually learning from them that what needs to be done. बट अगर आप ये इसमें कहें कि कोई बहुत ज़्यादा इसके ऊपर फोकस आया है, इस हद तक फोकस आया है कि लॉट ऑफ अस एक्चुअली डोंट वांट टू फाइनेंस से द कोल प्रोजेक्ट्स, ओके, सो एक अवेयरनेस की हद तक ज़रूर इसके ऊपर फोकस आया है, बट आई थिंक इसके ऊपर कोई अभी तक कोई प्रॉपर ऑर्गेनाइज्ड तरीके से फाइनेंशियल सेक्टर जो है वो कंबाइन नहीं हुआ. अच्छा, इसके ऊपर एक जो एफ़र्ट की जा रही है जिसमें fortunately I'm also a part of that, is the group that Dr. Shamshad has set up on ESG. So वहाँ पर some good work is being done at PICG or along with the Pakistan Stock Exchange as well, and SCCP and some other government entities as well. But I think we are far away from that. So there would be a requirement, I would say, for the banks to do some responsible lending. The boards are becoming aware of this. This is a real sort of threat to our country. आप देखें लाहौर में क्या होता है हर साल, और इस्लामाबाद और पिंडी में भी अब शुरू हो गया है. सो ये जो अवेयरनेस ऑन एन ओवरऑल बेसिस लोगों की भी और फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशंस के पर्सपेक्टिव से भी इन टर्म्स ऑफ रिस्पॉन्सिबल लेंडिंग, it's some time जो है ना उस पे लगेगा, और I think the effort has to be put in by the financial institutions.
Sure. So, like you said, that not much is being done. There's so much that needs to be done, and of course, commendable work that is being done under the leadership of Dr. Shamshad Akhtar, the PICG and PSX task force. I actually see this as a big opportunity. Just now in Glasgow, the commitment is about $1.3 trillion. I think banks should be actually sort of really gearing up, and they should be sort of picking up a lot of speed, because this is the way to go forward, and it should be rather at the forefront in terms of the agenda setting. Mohsin, your thoughts?
Just to add to what has been said, I think I would actually say that a lot is being done and a lot needs to be done. Both, I would put both. I wouldn't say कि काम ज़्यादा नहीं हुआ है. अगर आप सिर्फ स्टेट बैंक की स्कीम्स को देखें, एंड बासिर टॉक्ड अबाउट एग्जीक्यूशन, तो इसकी एग्जीक्यूशन किसके थ्रू हुई है इस रिकॉर्ड पीरियड में? बैंक्स के थ्रू हुई है. जिसमें मैं दो चीज़ें आपको बताऊं. आप ये पूरा हाउसिंग फाइनेंस देख लें, और विद इन हाउसिंग फाइनेंस आप ये लो कॉस्ट हाउसिंग देख लें, मेरा पाकिस्तान मेरा घर. इट्स अ वंडरफुल कॉन्सेप्ट. इट वाज अ ग्रेट नीड इन द कंट्री. गरीब आदमी प्रॉपर्टी नहीं ले सकता था. अब उसकी एग्जीक्यूशन पे काम हो रहा है. नाउ all the banks are working very hard. There are numerous challenges undoubtedly. Pace uski bahut tez rakhi gayi hui hai. We are all having to work very hard to deliver that. But the bottom line is that banks believe in that cause and the benefit it will create for the wider society. So I think इसी तरह से रोशन डिजिटल पे बहुत सारी बातें हुई हैं. रोशन डिजिटल उस वक्त इम्प्लीमेंट किया गया जब दुनिया भर में लोग कहते थे बैंक्स में अकाउंट खोलना इज़ मोर डिफ़िकल्ट. सबसे मुश्किल काम हो गया दुनिया में बैंक में अकाउंट खोलना. जब RDA लॉन्च हुआ 48 घंटे में आप बैंक में अकाउंट खोलें, दुनिया में किसी मुल्क में बैठे हुए 150 से ज़्यादा ममालिक से अकाउंट खोलें पाकिस्तान में. आई थिंक देयर हैज़ बीन अ फिनोमिनल प्रोग्रेस that the industry has been able to make. Yes, there is a lot of demand on the banking sector because there are various initiatives being worked upon. But I would actually say a lot of good, and I won't go into the details of the digitization of payments, State Bank kar raha hai, single window operation, etc., etc. So I think there is absolutely wonderful work, in my opinion, that is happening, and it is putting pressure on our resources and our infrastructure. But yes, we will all develop and we will all learn and we will execute, inshallah.
Sure. Yeah. I would just like to correct myself. I think I said 1.3 trillion. No, it was 130 trillion actually. So huge pools and pots of money that is available out there. And given that we are one of the most climate change affected country, I think we should be going forward and getting our fair share, because in terms of contributing to global emissions, we are not the biggest contributors, of course. So again, State Bank, of course, has this very good scheme for the RE. I think banks are in the position to push their customers and push a lot of industries in terms of how they can innovate if they have the right kind of financial support. Basir, your thoughts?
Gee, thank you. So, I'm sure many of us, that we lead the country in a big way in residential solar. So we are the largest providers of financing for residential solar. And we do this in partnership. So we have about 40 vendors that work with us, with our customers. And in addition to that, we use the State Bank scheme, which is this amazing scheme. It is subsidized down to 5% rate, and as you know, residential solar payback is about 4 years. So we lead that, but further we have coupled that with the program we have with the USAID, which gives us a credit comfort. So together, as a three-way partnership between ourselves, the central bank, USAID, and these vendors who have the end clients, it has worked really well for us. But in addition to that, for the last 4 years we've worked, and finally we've gotten there last year, is we've signed up with, and we're the first commercial bank in Pakistan to sign up, is GCF, which is the Global Climate Change Fund. It was a 4-year process. GCF, fortunately, unfortunately, is like the World Bank. It's a very slow-moving organization. But nonetheless, we finally got there, and we have a $200 million allocation for projects in Pakistan to lead through GCF. So it's gotten us there.
Lovely. Yeah, so I'll, since we have just 3 minutes left, I'll just move to the last question. And Shoaib, I'll start from you. Which sector do you see that is going to be, or which maybe 2-3 sectors which are going to be the game changes? Why, and what interventions that will be needed? Shoaib, can I start with you and then work backwards?
Can I share some thoughts on ESG first? Yeah, I will just take 1 minute.
Okay.
So basically, we all know that customer is the king, right? In our segments, apne segment mein. In my opinion, for anything like ESG to happen, the demand has to come from the customers. And that is happening globally. I was talking to one of the fund managers from Fidelity a couple of weeks ago. He said, हमारी जो investment products है ना, हमारे तो client आके पूछते हैं कि भाई आप ESG को देखते ही नहीं देखते, आप climate factors को देखते ही नहीं देखते जब investment करते हैं तो नहीं करते. So I'm pretty sure this is happening. Dr. Shamsie also mentioned about that. Textiles के जो customer हैं वो उनसे पूछते हैं कि आप climate factors को देख रहे हैं, ESG factors को देख रहे हैं. So is going to be the case with the banks. The investors who are investing in the bank shares are tomorrow going to ask, what factors do you consider when providing financing? So I'm totally against any regulation to regulate it. It has to be a private sector initiative. It has to be demand coming from the investors. And exactly the same thing which we saw in the Islamic mutual funds. As soon as there was a demand, we saw that the growth of Islamic funds doubled that of the conventional funds. So I'm sorry, there's a little time, so I would probably pass on to Basir.
Sure. Yeah. So, Basir, your thoughts, 30 seconds. Which industry, why, what interventions?
I think the whole, again, I come back to the same thing, the whole intervention today has to be around sustainable energy. And I think the mess that the discos are in is we need to get off-grid solutions.
Sure. Mohsin, the same to you.
I think in the local context, recent times के हिसाब से आप देखें तो जो ये पूरा government का construction पे initiative है, I think this can be a game changer, not certainly in the next few years, but more on an ongoing basis as well.
Sure.
So I would like to add another sector, which is IT. I think on the IT exports front, really need to get our act together. A lot of good work is happening. Unfortunately, उसका पैसा बहुत दफ़ा मुल्क के अंदर नहीं आता है, हमें visibility नहीं है उसकी. So things have to be organized. I think there's a lot of scope over there.
Thank you, gentlemen. I think very, very important thoughts. All these sectors are, of course, very important, whether it is construction, that is fueling the whole economic growth, renewable energy, technology. I would just add a few. And I think Ali, right at the beginning of the morning, he mentioned healthcare. I think healthcare is so important, and so is agriculture. And the way I see is that this is like a web connected, all of this, so there needs to be a lot of collaboration. Earlier when I was making notes, I'd made, is the regulator or are the regulations ready for this? But I think there's a good momentum and there's a good pace. It feels that the regulations are evolving with the going forward trends. Of course, there's so many lessons that we've learned that prepare ourselves for the future. And I think we are slowly and gradually overcoming the biggest trust deficit. There's so much need that we need to work together. I'm still very inquisitive about metaverse. Probably we need to dedicate an entirely different session for that. Thank you so much, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure moderating this session. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. May I request the entire panel to please stay up on stage with her. And what an enlightening conversation. Love the fact that our four leaders, in laying out the challenges and what the future is going to look like for the leaders of the future, emphasize that perhaps the regulation way and the tightening of the noose is not the way forward. The demand has to be more organic and coming from people. You've also highlighted that the upcoming construction, housing initiatives by the government, energy and IT are some of the fields you see a lot of potential in. And most importantly, all these are going to be priorities. One cannot take away that each are important, just as Ayla mentioned, healthcare is important and so is metaverse, but the fact remains how we sequence them and the jigsaw puzzle and the sequence evolves. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not going to let our panel go away without a token of our appreciation. For this, once again, may I request Mr. Ali Akhai, the chairman of the Martin Dow Group, Chief Marshal Suhail Aman Sahab, the Chief Executive of Strategic Engagements at Nutshell Forum, and Ms. Rabia Ahmed, the Director and Chief Operating Officer of Nutshell Group, to please join us up on stage. To give away these set of books, may I request Ms. Anam Akhai, the Group Director, Business Growth and Strategy at the Martin Dow Group, to please join us up on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for her. First and foremost, may we present to Mr. Yousaf Hussain, the President and CEO of Faysal Bank Limited. May I now request Mr. Mohsin Nathani, the President and CEO of Habib Metropolitan Bank, to please come forward and accept this on our behalf. We'd now like to present a token of appreciation to Mr. Basir Shamsie, the President and CEO of JS Bank. And last but definitely not the least, emphasizing the agility for future entrepreneurs and leaders, Mr. Mohammad Shoaib, CFA and CEO of Meezan Investment Management Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to also present our lovely moderator, Ms. Ayla Majid, the founder and CEO of Planetive, a book of, as a token of our appreciation, this beautiful book. If Stones Could Speak, Echoes from the Past by Iftikhar Salahuddin and Nazeen Salahuddin. For a group photograph, may I once again request the Chairman of Board of Investment, Mr. Asfar Ehsan, to please join us up on stage. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, ladies. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd now like to take a 30-minute working lunch break. May I request you to come back formally because we have 3 very exciting, very insightful sessions post-lunch. So once again, thank you for your presence. We'll take a quick 30-minute break and be right back.